Throughout the centuries, England and Britain has had a dark history of execution and bloodshed. Dozens of thousands of people were executed in a variety of different ways, from hanging, drawing and quartering, to beheading with the axe on Tower Hill during the Tudor period. These all had the same outcome, to punish a criminal in the ultimate way. Throughout the Tudor period and the reign of Henry VIII, 70,000 people were executed, including some of the king's best friends and 2 of his wives. Also, many women found themselves accused of witchcraft, and they were hanged on the gallows all over the land. But the final woman to be executed in Britain was Ruth Ellis, a young lady who had a rather troubled life at times. However, she was sentenced to death for murdering her lover outside a pub in London. But what is the story of Ruth Ellis's execution? Remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Ruth Ellis was born on the 9th of October 1925 in North Wales. After leaving school at the age of 14, she became a waitress, and then at the age of 17 she got pregnant. She had slept with a married Canadian soldier who was based in Britain during the Second World War. She then moved into a nursing hospital, and she gave birth to a son named Claire Andrea Nilsson, who was also referred to as Andy. The child's father sent money back for around a year, but then this stopped. Her child then went to live with Ruth's mother, whilst Ruth went to work in a number of jobs. She was an attractive lady, and she then fell into working in the nightclubs in London, and fell into this work through nude modelling. It paid a lot more than her other jobs previously did, and she then worked at the Court Club in Duke Street in London, and whilst here she met a dentist who was much older, named Ruth Ellis. The couple then married, and in 1951 Ruth gave birth to a daughter, and George refused to accept this daughter, and the couple then split up. Ruth after this returned to the nightclubs and dance halls of London, and she managed a little club in Knightsbridge, which was very popular, and she did have a number of celebrity friends. To win her affections, clients would shower her in lavish gifts and expensive ones too. Whilst working here, she then met the 25-year-old David Blakely, who was trying to build a racing car at the time, and many racers met inside of the bar where Ruth worked. As soon as they met, the couple hit it off and struck up a good relationship. However, when he moved into Ruth's flat, their relationship went off the rails. The pair at times were head over heels in love with each other, but at other times the pair were tense. David was a violent and heavy drinker, and he punched Ruth a number of times. He in January 1955 hit her so hard in the stomach that Ruth had a miscarriage, and David was a very jealous man who would accuse Ruth of having an affair with other men who visited the club where she worked. David also had affairs behind Ruth's back, and Ruth then struck up a friendship with Desmond Cousins, a former Lancaster bomber pilot who served in the RAF during the Second World War. She even moved in with Desmond for a short period after breaking things off with David, but she could not keep herself away from David Blakely. He continued to build his racing car with his friends, but during Easter 1955, he refused to see Ruth. Ruth believed David was having an affair with a nanny, and she became outraged with jealousy. On the 10th of April 1955, Ruth travelled from Desmond's home to the house of Anthony and Carol Finlatter, and she thought David was there. When she arrived, David drove off in his car, and Ruth then walked to the Mandala pub, where David was parked up outside. David Blakely remained in the pub until around 9:30 p.m, when Ruth called out to him as he left and he ignored her. But Ruth was armed with a Smith & Wesson pistol, and she then pulled this out and fired a shot at him. The first shot missed, and David began to run away. However, Ruth then fired a second shot which hit him, and David collapsed to the ground. Ruth then stood over him and fired 3 more bullets into him. One of these was at point-blank range into his back. She even shot a 6th shot, which ricocheted and hit someone who was walking past at the time. An off-duty policeman then arrested her, and Ruth was noted to have been calm and collected, and also sober. She was not intoxicated, and she confessed to murdering her former lover. She was then charged, and psychiatrists looked at her for possible mental illness, and doctors deemed her not mentally ill. On the 20th of June 1955, she was placed on trial, and she pleaded not guilty. She wanted her story out there, and she wanted to tell the jury how she'd been abused by the very man she murdered. She would tell them how violent he was, and and how his punches caused her miscarriage. Ruth said that it was obvious that when I shot him, I intended to kill him, and this was the intention that was needed to secure a guilty murder charge. Ruth believed that the jury would take pity on her as an abused woman, but the judge passed the mandatory death sentence onto her, and the jury only took 20 minutes to convict her and find her completely guilty. Ruth was then sent back to Holloway Prison to await her execution, and she would in the meantime be visited by her mother. She told her she did not want a reprieve from the death sentence. However, there were many people across England calling for her sentence to be overturned. This was denied, and her solicitor was dismissed, but those who were close to her asked her to come clean as to how she got the gun. On the 12th of July 1955, the day before her execution, Ruth wanted to make a will. Her lawyers asked her to reveal the whole story, but she told them she'd been given the gun by Desmond Cousins, who taught her how to use it the weekend before the murder. She also said that Cousins had driven her to the murder scene, and then following this, the people she spoke to went to the Home Office to try and turn over her execution. But this made Ruth's guilt greater, as it showed that the murder was premeditated, and it was said that we cannot have people shooting off firearms in the streets. Ruth wrote a final letter to David's parents saying, "I've always loved your son, and I shall die loving him." But on the day of her execution, Ruth Ellis was visited by Juice de Blanc, the bishop who came to her prison cell before it was time. They said prayers, but before 9 a.m. on the 13th of July, the executioner and hangman Albert Pierrepoint, along with his assistant, came into Ruth's cell. They then took her into a room adjacent to her cell where she was to be hanged. On the eve of her execution, 500 people had shown up outside the prison, chanting and singing to her, asking for her reprieve. Some even managed to escape the police cordon, but Ruth had been weighed and measured, and a drop of around 8 feet 4 inches was required to snap her neck, and the gallows had been tested. Pierrepoint would state that Ruth walked across to the gallows with her elbows held by her side, and she said nothing during her execution. When she reached the trapdoor, a white hood was placed over her head, then the noose was secured around her neck. Her legs were also fastened, and then Pierrepoint quickly pushed the lever, and Ruth fell through the trapdoor. Her whole execution took no more than 15 seconds to when she was summoned in the condemned cell, until she was then declared dead, and she was then left hanging for an hour. Following her execution at 9:19 a.m, the police guards placed a notice on the prison gates saying Ruth Ellis had been executed. Today her story is one which is very controversial, and she was seen as a woman who was abused and used by men, and she was a victim of horrific domestic violence. She was not right to kill the man, however she was a woman who was being treated terribly by her former lover. Ruth Ellis was the final woman executed in Britain. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.